Hello, friends. This is Just One Song. I'm Kurt. Tonight I have Leo and Monica. You know Monica.
Howdy, howdy,
and
howdy.
Adam will be joining us later. Tonight our guest is Mr. Max Allen from the Recording Fund. How you doing, Max?
What's happening? I'm doing good.
Max,
Welcome to the show,
can you
Max.
Tell us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the Recording Fund.
Recording
clumsy.
Fund.
I'm going to leave all that in. Let's try this again.
And-
It's a good. I'll keep it. It is what
You know,
it is.
when I'm in the studio, I'm
I
just
was
like,
just trying to welcome
just
him.
we just do
I
one
know.
more time.
I'm like, fine. One more time. Here
This
we
isn't
go.
live. Yeah.
I'm going to
It's just
leave
our
all of
lives.
this
It's
in.
just our
and
lives.
I'm gonna do this all in the show. Here we
It's
go.
messy.
It's a learning curve. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to exist. Thanks, you guys. All right.
Jesus.
Good evening, everyone. This is Just One Song. I'm Kurt. I'm your host. Tonight I have Leo.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Leo. I have Monica.
Hi.
Monica. Adam will be joining us a little bit later. He has moved to Vietnam, so his time zone is quite different. So it's a fun thing to juggle. But
Adam's
we'll get him
Adam's
on.
in Vietnam on the Henry Kissinger Foundation fund.
I didn't know that was a thing.
No, it's
Tonight
not.
we have a guest, Mr. Max Allen from the Recording Fund. How you doing, Max?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Max, thank you for
Of
being
course.
here.
Yeah, thank you, Leo.
I'm applauding. I'm trying to give Max a warm welcome.
I forgot to plug in the
Yeah.
applause machine.
We'll call it a soft landing. That's okay. We're landing here.
Max, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here with you folks.
So
I'm enjoying
we
your,
were just
your
talking
studio
about
setup.
Thank you.
setup.
Yeah,
That's what you're
we're
talking about.
live from the studio tonight, so that I actually had a real microphone as opposed to just some earbuds. Where normally I sit up in a different part of the house to do the Recording Fund work, kind of bisecting the two. But tonight you get to be in my vibey space. You can probably see the I'm like in a crypto room right now. I got the changing color lights back there. You know.
It reminds me of Thanos from Endgame, Marvel Endgame.
That's the vibe
I
I'm
always
trying to go for.
forget
Blade
that
Runner-y.
we don't have viewers; we have listeners. So I'm trying
yeah.
to aesthetically describe your room. You have a checkerboard. I want to play chess,
Oh.
checkers, right above
Leo.
this bright LED light.
Yeah, so I got color changing LED lights. Just think like YouTuber. What I need is like a gaming chair. And that would really complete it. But the up above there is some not sound insulation, but just things to kind of deaden up the sound of the room. So
For a
that it
YouTuber,
doesn't-
you need a gaming chair and then a racist diatribe towards minorities somewhere during your live stream.
It's the night's young. I'm gonna try not to go there. So
That was a PewDiePie reference.
The night is young. Yeah, that's good. Amongst others,
Most of them. I would say.
the video is going to be saved for this, so we could put this on our YouTube channel.
Should I put clothes on?
Oh, no.
Monica's laughing because I am completely naked and it's laughable.
And he's standing up too. It's
It's a weird way to record a podcast, really.
whatever gets you there, man.
Yep.
Well, let's
So
get
I
there.
met Max at NAMM, the National Association for Music Merchants. Max, are you a music merchant?
I am not a music merchant. Recording Fund is a non-profit. And so I was there drumming up interest for Recording Fund, which is a non-profit alternative funding model for independent music. So what we do is we support independent artists and musicians by helping fund the recording process.
How would that work? How do you choose who you record?
So this is a pretty this is kind of the $1 million question I get all the time. I get some people that they say, well, because I say, look, our goal is to not try to do it like a label. We don't have to have a commercial interest. We're not looking at artists as commercial investments. So we're not trying to ask people to prove their commercial viability. And so there's a layer of it that is non-merit based. But I think if we really look at the word merit, you just end up coming up with a new form of merit. But really it's like, we want to support artists that are underrepresented, unheard of, artists that don't look like what label systems typically fund, people that are making music and like, maybe I think it's great music, or maybe you think that it's great music. I don't want to be the arbiter of what is great music. I want to help people make music. And then there's going to be a listener for that out there. And so deciding who will get the funds, you know, we're really interested in understanding what an artist or musician's drive is, what's their dedication, and where do they fit kind of on a scale of diversity, right? You know, we need, the idea is that these funds have to be spread out equitably across all sorts of people in the U.S. We are just a U.S. nonprofit. I would love a day where we were international, but that's, you know, we got to learn how to swim before we can really get in the ocean here. Right. And so, right. And so that our funds that we are fundraising right now from charitable organizations and from, you know, going to NAMM and trying to build relationships with music manufacturers and merchants, those funds would then be distributed around to artists all around America, you know, all around the United States.
Max, you hit the buzzword that I was waiting for you to hit. You said equitable, and I think the model of what you are doing is someone used this word the other day with me. It was chequity. A lot of organizations, they like to do, like, especially during Pride Month, the chequity, the equity check mark, right? Oh, we're supporting the queer community and the Black community by changing our banner. Like, you were legitimately on boots on the ground, reaching out to underserved, marginalized communities who, and we've talked about this on this show before, a lot of our musical language comes from those communities, but the commercial viability of it has kind of been co-opted by not those communities. So what you're doing is you're kind of putting the power back from a commercial standpoint, creative standpoint, and the backing that a lot of people don't really have the means to do. Yeah. Because a lot of the artists that created the like American landscape of music come from communities without a lot of means. So I applaud you for what you're doing.
Thank you. I mean, we're at this is the first year, and for me, I'm a lifelong musician. I'm a born and raised musician. I was in the womb, and my mom was gigging, and I was kicking along, you know, kicking the bass, and and then I've been producing music for, you know, as long as I can remember. And so to kind of transition from just solely a music producer, I think producing music is really important. I think that that's one of my gifts in this world, is to be a muse and that almost surrogate bandmate to help people make a record and be like, no, we can really do it. To transition to a place like, no, actually, I want to try to help a lot of people make a lot of music. And so now to be a nonprofit leader and say, well, how the hell are we actually going to do that? You know, it's like you said, chequity is a pretty good way to put it, because from my standpoint, absolutely, we have to really live and die by that. You know, the first round of funding that goes out can't, you know, be monotone. It has to really be diverse and has to look at a lot of different types of music and things that are actually happening out there that don't normally get support. But you do have to, it's a lot to, you know, when you really think about the dollars that's going to take, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot to kind of reach all of those communities. And so, you know, equitable is like, you know, I think that in some ways it's going to happen in fits and starts as we, you know, we fundraise and then we distribute and then we fundraise more and we can distribute even further and we fundraise even more and then we can really distribute even further. You know, when we're talking about our first round of maybe 10 or 15 artists doing one song, just to try to get people to start believing that this is a possibility, it's going to be hard to hit all of those markets. You know, and actually, let's scrap the word market. It's going to be hard to hit all of those unique individuals, those people out there.
Perspectives. Yeah.
Perspectives, races, genders, body types, whatever we want to call that. You know, I think that there's an entire chasm that is outside of what a label who needs to just create profit is going to typically funnel money into, you know.
Do you guys take a more passive approach to that or an active approach? Is it more about, what's the most effective way, do you think, to getting all these different people from all these different walks of life to come to you or going out to them. What's your approach to that?
I think that it's gonna, in the beginning, everything is outreach. Right now, every day, every moment of my everyday is another email, and it's another, got to get the social media out, get the word out, spread the word. And I think that this organization will be in that position for a long time. So from that standpoint, some of it, as opposed to just saying, hey, we've raised X amount of money and we're ready to, open the application floodgate. Well, not a lot of people are going to pop out at that moment because we only have so much reach. So we're going to have to actually kind of go out there and continue to let communities know, and actually I think that this is actually a really beautiful question. What would be cooler? What would be other ways to let any said community, I would open this up to you guys. What would be even cooler ways to let any said community that has some music going on, hey, this is out here. How do we get into those communities? Because, actually, if we look at social media, yes, I get tons of artists writing me up saying, hey, I want funding. And I just say, hey, we're working on getting funding and you're on a list now. But I would be hard pressed to say that still isn't maybe somewhat homogenous, the sorts of people that are still coming in. And so, what would it really look like to double down and not just Chequity it, but say, how do we get further out there, and find the right things, and just let it be known, hey, you can apply for this.
I hope that
I'm sure we were just talking about TikTok and using the algorithms and social media to your advantage, throwing in certain hashtags, getting it out there, increasing that exposure. I think I wonder what sort of roadblocks you would meet on that, at least when it comes to making a decision, or even just logistical roadblocks you're coming to tackle over that.
I think therein lies the dilemma that that Max is talking about. Max mentioned that you guys are in this. The organization is in an outreach phase, and I hope you guys never grow out of that outreach phase, because
I think we'll be
lies
messaging for the rest of my life. I think
exactly therein lies, because even with social media, you have barriers to access as far as digital literacy, or people without means that are music creators, that don't have access. Like you said, is a very homogenized view of a very small spectrum just within America, right? Just within North America of what we see of people that are actually creating music, that those that need the funding the most are the least likely to hear it.
I totally agree. I think that while yes, these are all lanes that we have to develop, to grow, just to have a presence, they are actually probably not the most effective ways to find the sort of musicians and artists that are out there. It would be better to continually figure out how to reach out to more community centers, art centers, schools, churches, other, all sorts of different places that might represent the rest of the music that's out there. Because again, I think algorithmically we're speaking, as any one entity on the internet starts messaging, they start getting put into kind of a algorithmic lane, right? And you're just kind of finding the same people, and you can pay to market yourself to make that a wider reach. But I think that that's still in and of itself, when we think about really how to get this message out there, I think that it's about kind of forgetting everything. It's not just about Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and stuff, right? It's about no, seriously, who's that it's finding, letting buskers know on the street, honestly, letting every person know, and making it a word of mouth campaign, because I think it's people that know music out there, and it's not all just happening on the internet.
Do you find that there's Go ahead, Kurt.
Going back to, where they're saying you pay more money to market yourself. I mean, that's kind of the problem too. The biggest barrier to getting, your music out there, and the capitalization of music is money. And that's why you guys exist. That's the biggest barrier.
That's the hurdle
for any creative person. Do you have the funds to put it out there?
Yeah.
And so that's really not the solution, is just market yourself better. You can't. That's the hard part.
Yes, and this brings up a good point where just kind of delineating specifically what Recording Fund is at this phase planning on focusing on is that you can't market yourself until you have a recording, right? The recording is the barrier of entry into said music industry.
Yeah.
But we should. I want to separate separate the two, because we can consider it's your entry into the music industry, but also just making recordings is just to make art. So it's kind of like a two-pronged thing that we have to think of it. Like, yes, we are helping artists and musicians do the one thing they have to do to have access to participate in the music industry, the market. But we're also I can't separate that from the fact also that we're actually just helping artists and musicians make art. To make a recording is a very specific form of making musical art. And I think what I'm very interested in after having made records with people for a fee for many years is what happens when we change where those dollars are coming from. When it comes from a label, you're like, oh, I've made it, all these things are happening. And then a lot of label things happen, but you have a lot of people saying you have to be this, you have to be that. What if there's an organization, a nonprofit alternative funding model for independent music, that said, hey, we believe in you. Go make something.
It seems like you're not only creating the tangible aspect of the creation, but you mentioned that you're also in that creating art. There's an element of education that is going to come with what you're doing, not just with the theoretical practice of like creating a tangible, recording that you could sell, but also like creating art, but also just like the actual practice of recording and studio work,
the experiential education of the entire thing. Like that's the creative process. If there's one thing that I like to talk even more about than all of this and making records, it's the creative process. It's actually good for humanity, for people to make recordings, because the creative process is going to just expand their mind. There's no way that it doesn't. I've sat in the room thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours with people just going like, oh my God, we did it. Even if I'm with people that have made 10 times the amount of records I've made, and we hit that moment, we all look at each other and we're like, oh my God, we did it. It might be 4 a.m, it might be 4 p.m. It might have taken 20 hours, 2,000 hours, or 1 hour, and you go, we did it, and everybody's transformed. That's the process. That is important. It's important outside of selling that. That is something that is magical, and that happens. And so there's like a very multi-dimensional thing at play here when I say, let's see what happens if we just helped people make more recordings.
And then is it more quality or quantity is what's being prioritized through that? Is it
right? That's a good question, because then we have to parse out quality, right? Quality is a subjective conversation, and I think that there's some place where we might say quality is like a quality of recording, but necessarily to say somebody's recording in terms of music isn't quality. It's a pretty tricky place, and I want to really err on the side that there's a listener for everything out there. And also, mind you, when we're talking about reaching out to communities or all sorts of underrepresented musics, so we're not just dealing with the people that are professional. And I think that the conversation of professionals in music is a really interesting kind of quandary to get into. But we're talking about, there's also a spectrum of, I think that there's a space, again, it requires a lot of fundraising to get to this place to be able to do this, but there's a space where you can help people make their first recording, you can help people make their third or fourth recording. Obviously there will be a point where their career's already working in a place that they probably shouldn't be the recipient of charitable funds. But so when you're helping somebody make their first recording, I think we're having a different conversation about quality, right? They've never done it. They don't know the experience of, like, if you spend a lifetime recording, you have a whole different mindset that you go into when you go to play that guitar part. You know what you're thinking about. If it's your first recording, which is so awesome. That's a different thing that's happening. And, you know, there's a producer or an engineer being like, yeah, try it a little bit more like this. And they're guiding that ship through. And so quality is like a continuum that having, I ran a small label with some friends for a little while, and I realized that what I never want to do again is be the judge, you know, the one that judges the quality or the coolness of the music. Because that's like not what it's about. There's obviously there's music that will go on to that a lot of people will really like and will go on to do things. That's great. But I think it's completely decoupling the question of, well, we should just make art and we should allow people to make it at all levels, support them at all different levels, because it is transformative.
And that's what happens when you remove the priority of making money off of the music. When it's just to make music, you're going to make good music. It's the quality will come as it goes on, you know, that freedom.
Have it.
You're going to get some cool stuff out of this, man.
Well, having that societal shift too of not basing all of the creative process off of like having this end goal, because you mentioned just creating for the sake of creating, that aha moment that, you know, you get in the studio where like, or, you know, towards the end when you're finally going into mastering the end of a record, like, I can't believe we recorded 9 songs. Like, just recording one song or creating one song, just one song. Wink, wink. What? See that tagline?
Man,
that is like
so under the radar right there.
Like,
yeah, I was really trying to.
But
we were getting real. My wife would
stay on
disagree.
brand. Everybody,
I'm never under the radar. Always obvious and obtuse. No, it's so important to teach. Obtusius is the brother of Optimus Prime. I'm really into sibling analogies tonight. I don't know why.
I don't know why either.
It's so important to teach people just like create, just regardless of the we have this like weird reward mentality in everything we do. Like, what am I gonna get out of it? The innate qualities of just sitting down in front of a guitar or learning a craft or, you know, plucking a couple strings a night. That in itself, creating, is the reward, is all the things that you get from it, right? And teaching that alone, I mean, regardless of like everything else that you are setting out to do, teaching people to have this sort of like practice in being able to like be comfortable in their own perspective of where they come from and to be okay to create. And like, you could be part of this conversation because there's no one like you. That's you can't teach that. I mean, you can't teach that, and that's what you're setting out to do.
And the trick within that is going to be, I mean, you know, I have trusted board members and other people that have asked me outright. They're like, look, are you trying to recreate what it's like to be in the studio with you know, friends that really like recording with me at the helm? And I have to take that to heart and say, like, okay, I can't control the experience in every studio, but I think that there's a way to, by starting this organization and gathering like-minded individuals, create a hell of a lot of intention that can kind of seep through the dollars that go down, and through the way that we message that as we do fund grantees. And what is the language? You know, I think that there's a really big touch point with artists. You know, when I think about this in 3, 5, 10 years, that's a lot of touch point with a lot of artists to start talking about that creative process, to start talking about that. What happens in that studio? What are you going to do? What are you doing? And what's the end goal? And how do you decouple it from, like, you don't need to, like, we'll cover it. Obviously, I can't stop somebody from wanting to create something that's going to garner them fame and that changing the way they make something. But I do think that when you take the dollars out of it, you change where the dollars are coming from. It allows a little bit more opportunity to do something different.
We talk a lot about.
You're really giving them, Leo. You and I, man.
We're
so
chomping at the bit tonight. I'm excited.
Are you guys out of phase?
I don't know. Leo, say I don't know if that happens. Adam's going to join us in a few minutes. So we'll catch him up to speed. No, I like it's
Adam,
just,
listen to this entire conversation before you get in here,
and then we'll say goodnight.
Yeah.
That's true. You made a good point earlier though, where in order to market yourself, you need that recording. So that makes me think: is this a one-off thing where this is the product will give you, or are you thinking about having artists continually on and funding them, or just giving them the tools they need to really just hit the ground running with something that's well recorded and produced just professionally? Sorry, the echo.
No, I got you. Were like, am I echoing? No.
Yeah.
This is a great question, right? So, a label picks a artist and they just dump a lot of resource into that one artist. As a nonprofit, if we chose one person and put a lot of resource into one person, that would be the improper personal benefit of a private individual from charitable funds, right? That's the lawyer language. That's what I've had to go through with the lawyers to kind of go the long way around about proving this to the IRS that this is a very viable nonprofit venture. So I think that there would be a yearly or maybe 18-month cap on funds that can go to any one individual, because I don't know that our goal is to launch any singular one artist. I think the launch is actually on the artist. The artist figures those things out better than labels. What the artists don't have is the money. And in this current incarnation, our funding support stops at making the recording. We can help you make the recording. To say that we know where you should put your marketing dollars or the rest of your dollars would be somewhat disingenuous, because all of that's not to say this to anybody that's in marketing, but most of marketing it's a crapshoot or snake oil
100%.
on one level. It's I've seen it work. I've done projects that I've seen the ad dollars really deliver, but you're dealing with multi-billion-dollar corporations that want you to literally, like a Keno machine, just keep on shoveling the dollars into it to try to figure out how to win on that.
Right.
You don't want the lawyers to ask you, hey, why did you spend $500,000 on this Kid Rock cover band? Seems like a passion project of yours. And then you would say, ba to ba.
Yeah,
spend,
bang to bang bitty. I spend the money how I want to.
Yeah.
Kid Rock in that one. Wow.
We were talking about how you can't really separate the creation process with the recording process. They're one and the same. And that ability to conflate what you're doing, which is multifaceted, but what you're doing, conflating that with the big bad wolf of the music industry, which we talk about a lot on this podcast.
Yes.
There is a stigma around music around and no offense to what you do, but there is a stigma on the big bad music exec, recorder, producer, and part of that, I'm just trying to think of what are some challenges that you think you'll face or you have faced getting rid of that stigma with communities that are traditionally underserved by the music industry.
So the big bad being the music industry at large, as represented by the individual producers that are trying to funnel. Is that part of the?
Not necessarily.
Define the big bad for me a little bit more. That specific hurdle in this, because you're right. It's where do we lie in terms of a good example would be are we creating charitable recordings for people for them to sell them to the big bad and then become famous? And then that's a very tricky legal question right there. Then is that the improper personal benefit of a for-profit corporation who buys the recording from somebody that had a grant, right? This is a very tricky little space to get into. But yeah, what level of on the big bad are we? If we took down the road, I want to have enough clout to go to the big bad, if you will. Sorry everybody that I know that works at big labels, but you did what you did, man.
You made your choice.
I want to be able to go to them. They are a $30 billion a year industry. Goldman Sachs that thinks in 2030 they will be a $50 billion a year industry. I want to be able to go to those majors three and say, you guys have a lot of room to be very charitable. And drop that in the bucket over here. Very, very microscopic drops of that sort of cash into a charity like this, we can make a lot of recordings. And then, what level of in cahoots are we with the big bad? I think about that all the time. But I think that it's also poetically philanthropic to think that that there's enough money inside this one ecosystem to create a massive amount of goodwill and actually to just subsidize. Like, music's at a level right now, it's like, think of farming. We subsidize farmers because the price of grain costs a lot to make and sells for nothing. Right? It's literally music, but we don't subsidize it.
Well, we've talked about on the show how we kind of need the big labels because their existence, in a sense, it funds the smaller labels. It funds
Absolutely.
the smaller independent music in some way. And if this can be a more effective extension of that type of funding, heck yeah. If it's classified as a charity or it's a nonprofit, then and if you can get donations from labels, okay, it's money from the big bad, but it's money that they get a tax write-off about, which is the number one incentive for them to be philanthropic, apart from having the goodness in their hearts to do so. But
because that's what it is.
Because that's what it is. No, but for them to donate and put some of that money out there, now they're just putting more out into the world, more music into the world that doesn't cost them as much, and they might see a return on investment with that music potentially. But it's nice that you guys aren't being hands-on with what they do with that recording.
The big thing is, though, is like we're talking about the music industry from a music industry perspective. I'm talking more so from the aspect of like underserved communities or just people that don't traditionally have music record executives coming towards them. There is a mistrust of authority within those communities, and we're on the topic of equity. So what is part of the outreach is to show you like, hey, we're not going to take advantage of you. Right. That's what they told every single black blues artist that, recorded and then they sold. We're still waiting to see a dime. Right. This is a
great point. Well, so we'll go back a little bit. As a nonprofit alternative funding model for independent music, we will not own your music. You will own your music. We will try to give you the best information about how that works out. And instead of paying artists directly, we're going to pay the individuals that help make the recordings, right? So we're going to pay a producer, we're going to pay an engineer, we're going to pay for the studio costs to be in the room, we're going to pay the studio musicians, we're going to pay, there will be a clientele list that what is it? And it has to fit the budget. We don't have endless budget to put into people. That's not the point of this. And so, artists have to get smarter and figure out, okay, what is really needed and how are we going to do this? But then those contracts that, each one of those people will just ultimately be under contract to be paid. It's contract for hire work. And so the terms of that sort of stuff can get worked out in a good contract up front that will be originated by Recording Fund. And, obviously it has to be written by lawyers, but I have no interest in having sharky lawyers write back end deals into this. This is what you get for this money. Recording Fund's paying it. Artists or whoever, the engineer or the producer, you get your portion up front, and upon completion, that you get the rest of it. You don't own it, because we all know producers and engineers that have been like, F you, you owe me more, now I own your music. If you look at her right now, trying to get out of her contract. That's an insane contract. She's been in contract for 7 years. She owns nothing. She can't do anything. No, she's been in contract since she was 14. And they're past the 7-year mark.
What artist we talking about?
Her. Is that how you say it? H.E.R. Her.
Yeah, we got you.
Gotcha. I thought you were alluding to someone like her. I was like,
no, sorry. Yeah, I don't like. I'm like I listen to music, but I really don't know music all that well. Like, so yeah, we don't own it, and we're going to try to help you not lose it in the process, right? Because that's where it happens. And then through having good partnerships with trusted organizations that are value aligned, I think because this is a great touch point to provide education to artists. What are your rights as far as your royalties? You know, doing some education. Like I say this over and over, I've never met two people in the entire music business that say the same sentence about what music publishing is. Can we clear that up? Can we clear that up, man? I talked to a guy yesterday from BMI, and he was like, well, that's because they haven't talked to me yet. And I was like, well, David, you're the one, man. You are the guy. I'm coming back to you, and I want you to host. I want you to write the literature. Like, I want that language to come from the horse's mouth. No more third-party people saying, like, this is what music publishing is, and this is this thing, and like, you know, there's how you do it. The horse's mouth, the PROs.
Even then, those rules were written like
he's one of 4.
They didn't let black people in PMI. So
well, no, you were absolutely right. You were absolutely right. So no, maybe it doesn't have to be them.
Well,
but
ASCAP had the history and BMI.
But they are also, both of them are the reason that we're in this whole mess with the copyright board too. It's like there's not really a good option when you look at either of them. Like, there just is not. But, you know, maybe just the principle, like who would be a good, and again, these aren't decisions that I make solely. Like the artists that become granted, I actually want nothing to do with that process. I want to assemble a committee of people that are far more diverse and interested than I am. I want to have this conversation and continue to be on this side of it and develop a committee that can actually do that sort of like, you know, blind checkout of the music and say, here's who's gonna, you know, go forward with it. And again, emphasize it doesn't look like me, because what am I? I'm a, you know, a white privileged male. I have one skill in this. I can talk about this endlessly. And otherwise, you know, there's got to be a lot of other people kind of putting this thing together. How are we going to actually put these funds out there into the world, you know? So
now, this is the stuff that freaks me out. Like, and I've been in music for like 10 years. When I start hearing about this stuff, I'm like, wait, what? Like, it is so overwhelmingly daunting to someone that is just coming into, like, I want to record a song. Like, I got to learn about a performance rights organization and publishing and copyright and all this, and what's an ISRC code? Like, all of that stuff. When
or
like,
ISWC or like IPI number or like, you know. But here's the thing. This is what's been preyed upon. This is what's preyed upon in all industries. All industries
like
have
bow your head and pray, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, by those that, you know, when they slaughter the lamb, man, like that's what's happening. They pray and they slaughter the lamb, and the lamb is us, because, you know, as my experience of not knowing enough is I guarantee doing commercial work where, you know, the PRO should actually definitely be collecting. I know for a fact I lost tons and tons of money in residual and royalties because I didn't understand the contracts up front, and I didn't understand how to, you know, submit my own cue sheet when the company was an idiot and they weren't doing cue sheets. You know, I didn't know enough, and I was afraid because I was like, please, sir, please take my song and put it into a commercial. Great, that was good, but what we don't know harms us, and I think especially what artists don't know harms the hell out of them, because everybody wants music in their items. Everybody wants a piece of music. When you see people, you see like Springsteen, $500 million. I saw that somebody else is selling their catalog for like, Pink Floyd might sell their catalog for $600 million. Timberlake, $100 million. Bowie, $250. You know, Dylan, $250, $350. They're not putting that money in to not make it. They're putting in $500 million to make $1 billion. They're not looking to make 600. They're not looking to make, you know, they're looking to double their money on that. So the value of music isn't going anywhere. You know, it's the more that we know. So you're right. Even if people are, I think this is where the touch point's really interesting, and it can be different for each, you know, group. We have the beginners, we have the intermediates, then we have the people that are kind of know their stuff. But there's got to be a layer of like, hey, to get this grant, you actually should really know a couple of these things. You know, maybe even to, you know, to sign the final papers, it should be like, you know, here's a quiz. You know, it doesn't block you, but please know these things. It's important.
a lot of industries,
it's
like banking, one of them, Wall Street, music industry is one of them. The making things convoluted, complicated, with a lot of barrier to access to enter to just be a play on the field is a part. It's for me. I think it's a part of self-preservation. Like we want the old club. We're gonna keep it this way for a long time. And we want to have all the chips on the table and control this. Like just mentioning a quarter of the acronyms. There's acronyms up the ass in every fucking industry, and that's a barrier to entry for a lot of people. And that's primarily the audience that you're trying to work with, is the creators you're trying to work with. Like you start throwing out all these acronyms at people, and they get like weirded out, like freaked out, like and that in essence helps the old guard of the status quo that has been controlling the big bads, basically. And we'd say big bads like lovingly, like, come on, I want some money too. But I feel like you have a real opportunity, Max, to like really change the dichotomy of how, from an education standpoint, of like, let's get you in there, and this is like kind of take us under the wing, and this is where you like, we're not going to do it all for you, but this is how you get started.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that because the onus is a little different when a label comes in and says, we own all this stuff and here's 55 pages of contractual agreement that you're never going to understand and read. And so somebody else is going to say that it looks good, and that lawyer's in cahoots with the label anyways. And you sign it, and that's a deal. And then you're like, I can't even think about those terms. But what happens when we say, hey, you own this, and here's some of the relevant terms around your ownership of this now? Just so you know, what this means when we say that you own this is that you actually own the publishing already. You don't have to copyright it. You made it. It's copywritten already by the sheer fact that you willed it into the damn universe. And, like almost like a gift package of like, this is yours. Here's the relevant things to maybe understand about it's yours. It's like if somebody gave you a tree, or a plant, they're like, this is when you should water it. These are the things. Is that maybe the way that we should be looking at this a little bit? Like
I think of a little kid at Chuck E. Cheese getting a bunch of raffle tickets, and the mom saying like, "Hey, these are your raffle tickets. You can pick any of the toys on the wall over there." Except for that one up there, because
it's something like that. It's like we're giving it, if it's not ours to own. I have no interest in owning any piece of it as an organization, as an individual, not even remotely. And anybody that ever suggests that to me, I'm like, whoa. So what happens? Like you said, it's a teaching moment.
The fun thing too is when you have that song, when you record it, the master rights come with it, so you're automatically giving it to them, which that's the thing too, is like, I think about like a medical procedure. You usually have a post-care team that works with you, and if you had like a legal professional, not you, but if there's like a legal professional or a legal firm that could help you negotiate the contracts, because we talk about how convoluted these contracts are, which is funny because they're so complicated, but the reason they're so complicated is so that because they're trying to be clear. They're trying to be specific and airtight. And the funny thing is about the contracts is, for a contract to be valid, it has to be mutually beneficial. And if you can prove that a contract is not beneficial to you and you've entered into it, if you can prove that, it is invalid. And so, that's what people don't understand, is when you look at a professional contract from a label, you're signing away your publishing rights in many cases, but you're saying that the monetary compensation you're getting for the year makes that beneficial from you. And it's just educating people. No, and that's not the case. That's not every case. Sometimes it is. Sometimes, take the lump sum, depending. It's such a nuanced thing, If you're a production music composer, if you make music for libraries, you're gonna take some liberties with your royalties. If you're sourcing music from other composers for certain cues that come in, it's just extra complicated. If your bread and butter is writing short 1-minute cues, honestly, so long as you can do that consistently and you're willing to do that, sometimes it's okay to take the lump sum. But if you're writing a theme song and you're writing like a pop song, I mean, I think the medium for what it's being used really matters.
It does. And so, again, well, just always understanding. Again, we were talking about this earlier. There is always artists, we just don't typically have a great business brain and artist brain at the same time. And it's, you know, everybody out there tries to teach this in one way or the other, right? We're talking about how to get past your creative blocks to like have executive function to do creative things, you know, which like I don't know a good way to do that other than to just address it straight on and, you know, really say what you don't know will hurt you in the long run. And us as an organization, you know, to maybe just come back and address the historical distrust. Why are we helping you? Because we just want you to make music. And we're not going to own your master, nor are we going to own your songwriting credits. And if anything, we're going to try to put the most unobtrusive sort of training wheels on the process so that nobody else in that process that we are involved in can come in and try to take anything from you in that one recording process. You know, there's a lot of down road implications that keep me up at night about how to solve for, you know, and they're probably way out in the future. But what happens when a label does want to buy the recording? You know, say said artist goes and does, you know, they put their song out on TikTok and it goes boom, right? And then the label comes in, they're like, yeah, we want to buy that out. What do we do? You know, what's the goal? And actually, I just had lunch today with a guy that's on our advisory board. He was Springsteen's engineer for 45 years. He's an old, you know, we go get funny lunches up around the edge of the lake, and he was saying a similar thing. He was like, look, you're probably going to need to anticipate what happens at that point, and it's almost like almost as a, you know, as a browbeating on those sorts of labels that would come in and do that. So you need to cash the charity back out.
Well, ask him what does Springsteen's you said his catalog was 500 million? I mean, that's a good starting point, I would say. Yeah, 500 million. Yeah. And
yeah, exactly. Well, you know how that probably worked out. It probably ended up being like 450, and then a lawyer takes 20% of that. You know, a lawyer team takes 20, the manager takes 20, taxes take 37%, you know. Like it's amazing how that all works out. But yeah, it should be $50 million. But there, you know, those are just interesting. You're right. Like, what is our relationship to, so we are inherently doing something that gets commercialized. People are going to want to put it out in the world. And what's our place in that, you know? How do we just send them off with the little care kit, a post-op, you know, kind of consult, you know, don't tear your stitches out. Don't just immediately sell it out to anybody. You know, that's kind of it's a tricky space, but you're right. And I actually really appreciate that conversation of like, what differentiates us really at the end of the day from being a label? Well, we're going to own your stuff, and actually we can't help promote you. We can promote you by the fact that you come through the programming, but we're not going to necessarily be your marketing team. But maybe there's opportunity to connect you with, actually, you know, if I ever found a really trustworthy marketing group, which I've found a couple, you know, maybe there might be value-based sort of relationships with marketing teams that were willing to give reduced rates to groups that come through, and acts or artists that come through our programming, which I think it would only ultimately be like a portion of the amount of people that come through the programming that are going to say, oh, I want to do that next thing.
It's such a radical idea.
It's radical.
I mean, we have just radical, like tubular, bro, but also radical is like it's like industry shattering, or it just the stigma around. I mean, we just talked about the negative stigma of the record, you know, the big bads of the record industry for the last 20 minutes. And there is a public perception of that, and like working around that to show those that you want to be a part of this organization, of this nonprofit, to help. That's a hurdle, but I feel like that's in part of like what you're trying to do is re-educating people of like.
Yeah, but just by the mechanics of like almost purely based on the mechanics of how the money flow goes and who owns what at the end of the day, we are just not that. You know, ownership would denote something else, but we actually can't even legally do that. That's not even what we would get in trouble down the road if we were owning the materials and we were owning copyright and stuff. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting part of it, how to cozy up to all of that, but also say yes, and we are different. We are of the music industry, and we are also a different thing. That's kind of the whole point. It's like there is something other than the way that the music industry works, because it's infantile. It's 120 years old.
Hey guys, that was part 1 of a 2-part episode. We had a long interview with Max, and we felt that there was too much great stuff here to cut. So look forward to a part 2 of our conversation with Max Allen of the Recording Fund.